All right, everyone. I'm here with Connor Newcomb, the host of the Lockdown Orioles podcast. How you been doing this season so far?
Yeah, I've been good. The Orioles are under 500 to begin the year, but it's only been 11 games. And listen, when baseball's back, generally the positivity can run for a while. So it's been good so far.
Very good. Talk about the farm system that you have because I think the last time you were on the show we didn't dive deep into the farm system. So talk about the players that we should be looking into that could be getting called up this year.
Yeah, the Orioles no longer have that kind of number one farm system in baseball that they had for a while they were really in the full rebuild led by Mike Elias. They had players like Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman and Jackson Holliday, Christian Rodriguez coming through the system. They were all top 10 prospects, three in a row. Gunnar, Adley, and Jackson were number one prospects in baseball. They have Samuel Basallo right now. He's kind of a consensus top 15 prospect in the league. He is a huge left-handed hitting catcher who can also play some first base, who kind of looks like Jordan Alvarez of the Astros out there. He's just so
Yeah,
massive with big power at the plate. There are still some questions about his catcher defense, so there's some worry that he'll become a first baseman or a DH, but I think he can be a catcher. He's in AAA now. Unfortunately, for him, the Orioles have Adley Rutschman, so it's tough for him to just be called up and immediately be a catcher. And he also has two different injuries right now. He has some elbow inflammation. He has a hamstring issue, so he is on the injured list in AAA, but he could be up this year. Then the other big name is Kobe Mayo, who did make his debut at the end of last year. He's a third baseman, huge power from the right side of the plate. He just, he only got about 40 to 50 at bats last year and he really struggled. Some guys do struggle when they're 22 years old and they first come to the big leagues. There's just not really a spot for him on the big league roster right now. Eventually this year there will be, and definitely next year there will be, but he's also off to kind of a slow start in AAA. So it's going to kind of be interesting to watch. It is really intriguing though. The Orioles have those two prospects. They're both in AAA. They both should be in the big leagues at some point this year, and they're both top 25 prospects in the major leagues. And then beyond that, the reason why the Orioles don't really have that top five system in baseball anymore is because
they
beyond
get
that, it's
called
just a
up.
lot of guys with questions. Yeah, they get called up, right? And that's not a bad thing, right, David? Like you have all these great prospects, you'd like them to be in the big leagues. You know this with the Red Sox right now. The Red Sox system isn't going to be ranked as highly next year because Campbell and Anthony and maybe even Meyer will be in the big
Yeah,
leagues. And that's a good thing. And that's kind of what the Orioles have gone through the last couple of years. And so there's some other interesting guys. Their last two first round picks, outfielders Enrique Bradfield Jr. and Vance Honeycutt, should both be in AA this year. They're both really interesting players, but they both have huge question marks and are not going to be factors in the big leagues for the next year or two. So it'll be interesting. They still have a couple of super prospects, but it's not the system it used to be.
yeah, and I think the Tigers right now have the number one farm system. Am I correct right now? Uh,
Yeah, I think at least some outlets
yeah,
they do. Yeah.
yeah. So I think the Tigers will start to, they've been on the roll uh, recently and had a postseason run last year against Adrian Hin's former team, the Astros. Speaking of which, so it's going to be interesting to see what um, teams with the farm systems can do in the near future, coming up in the next couple of years. What team in the National League do you think has the best farm system? If we look closely to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have some of these teams that have guys that are fairly close to the major leagues. I always look at the Padres, not because they're always ranked the highest, but because the Padres do such a fantastic job of turning guys you've never heard of into incredible prospects. The funny thing with the Padres is their GM AJ Preller generally will then trade those guys before
Yeah,
they ever get to the big league so he can make his big splash. Now, he obviously kept some of the best ones. He kept Fernando Tatis. He kept Jackson Merrill, who they turned into a great player and just signed an extension. He's kept some of the best players, but he has no problem trading those guys to go get, the biggest one being a Juan Soto a couple of years ago, but to also
yeah,
go and trade some of those guys. So I'll always trust in the Padres to have a great system. Somehow,
yeah.
some way, the Dodgers still have a great system, even though they have the
I
best major
know it's
league team
crazy.
as well. And then the other team, I'll at least give a small shout out to. I don't have huge faith in this team's development process, but the Nationals do have some intriguing young players that are starting to get into
Yes,
the
they
big
do.
league. That could. I don't know if this is the year they fully turn around. I think 2026 will probably be the year they turn back into a playoff type team. but they have some interesting players, guys like Dylan Cruz and James Wood, who have gotten to the big leagues, and they've got some pitchers and some bats who are coming up shortly as well.
One of my friends recently said that earlier before the season said, look out for the Nationals. And I think they might be a little bit underrated because they had a huge win against Dodgers last night as we're recording this. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go forward this season. And same with their Orioles as well, which is a team that has postseason experience now. How many years do you think if actually say, okay, this is going to be a World Series championship contender?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been a World Series contender the last 2 years. It's hard to say how big a chance they had to do it. They did in 2023. They won 101 games. They won the AL East. That's a team you feel like they were the number one seed in the American League. You got to feel like that's a team that can win the World Series. They get swept in the ALDS by the Rangers, who actually go on to win that actual World Series. And it's just like, okay, this team was too young. Most of that team, David, I remember, I forget what the number was. I think it was 3 of their 26 players had actually even played in one single playoff game. The team was just so young that nobody had really ever been there. And so you chalk it up to that. They don't win the division last year, but they get a wild card spot. They get to play the playoff games at home. And they're playing against the team in the Royals that hadn't really been to the playoffs. And the Royals come in and sweep them. And then last year, I think it turned to like, okay, they've now played 5 playoff games, this kind of core group. They've lost all 5 of them. 4 of the 5 have been at home. And you just start to think, when can they get over the hump? Because I think talent-wise, even though the team looks different this year, no Corbin Burns, no Anthony Santander, I think talent-wise, this is a team that still has enough good players to get hot and win a World Series. But at some point, David, they just have to first win one playoff game with this group. They still have not even won one single playoff game with this group. So for me, it's almost like I think they have the talent to do it this year. Starting rotation, they would need to add to it for me to really think it's going to be a legitimate World Series contender. But I want to see them win a playoff series. Like if they were a wild card team this year, I just need to see them win a wild card series, win 2 out of 3, and just advance to the next round. And then I could say, okay, this team can win a playoff game. This team can win a playoff series. If I see them do it once, I have the confidence they could do it 3 more times or however many more times they would need to do it. Unfortunately, we haven't seen them do it at all. And so talent-wise, yes, they can, but they got to get over that hump at some point. And hopefully that's this year. Even if they don't win the World Series, if they can win a playoff series or 2 this year, that will just take a huge weight off their back, potentially heading into next year as well.
Yeah, just a playoff series, it'll just be like the mission complete right there. But you rather be in this position than a team like the Colorado Rockies, for example, where they just don't go to the postseason at all. And I think you're totally grateful that you're in a space where you have a great farm system, something even the Angels don't have as well, that it can still contend for a World Series, in recent years, like you said.
Yeah, I'd definitely rather be in the playoffs than be losing a lot of games. It wasn't that long ago that the Orioles were losing 100 games, so I'd much rather be in this position.
Yeah, I remember, like you always said yesterday, like, for example, let's just say the end of the 2010s weren't pretty, but in the mid-2010s, they were pretty good. I remember, there was, 2014, 2015. Like I've always said, their 2014 they're division winners of that era for a reason. I thought they always been a tough competitor when it come to Boston, even in 2018, 2019, for example. Even though they were a historical bad team, I knew when they come to Boston, they'll have that competitive fire because they were those division winners previously for a reason.
Yeah, they've historically played well, especially under Buck Showalter in that era. They played really well at Fenway Park, actually, in total. Yeah.
And what do you think about the Red Sox this year? To be honest with you,
they look like the best team in the division so far. Really, as soon as Rafi started to hit, and I know he hasn't fully come back to what he should be, but after the 0 for almost 20 that he was to begin the year, that offense is scary. And that was a team that had a good offense last year with a pitching staff that started off so great, that not throwing fastballs and throwing everything else.
They weren't ready and start the year.
Kind of crumbled down the stretch, and I still thought that offense was good. You add Bregman, I think they're doing good by Christian Campbell, letting him he's hit well. He's gonna slump. That's gonna happen at some point. But to let
Yeah.
him get it out of the way now and have him be ready for the second half of the season and be ready for the postseason, I think they're doing well by him. For the Orioles' sake, I hope that there's still a little bit of issue with Devers and being upset that he got third base taken. But for the Red Sox' sake, if that is their biggest hurdle this season, they're going to be a really good team because there is a lot of talent. I know some Red Sox fans don't like Yoshida, but I think he could still be a good hitter, and he's going to come
Just
back
be a
at some
pinch
point.
hitter. Just be a
They're
pinch
going to have to
hitter.
find a way to play him, but he'd be one of the best pinch hitters in the league if that is his role. So I think they have a lot of talent. I still question the back part of their rotation. I know getting
Yeah.
some guys back from injury like Giolito would certainly help that, but I would, if I had to predict right now, I think after the Garrett Cole injury, my prediction would be Red Sox to win the division. If the Yankees still had Garrett Cole, they still had Giancarlo Stanton, maybe I lean Yankees, but without those two, I think the Red Sox look like the best team right now.
I mean, the Yankees are the highest team right now with until they went to Detroit or Pittsburgh, whatever that was. They have Bellinger, they have Goldschmidt, still a pretty scary lineup over there as well. I think they're in the postseason every year, so I expect them to be in the postseason every single year. But yeah, we'll see what happens. The Red Sox extended him Alex Cora for a reason, and that is to communicate with the players. Do you see some of that in your manager?
Yeah, I think there's some back and forth from Orioles fans about Brandon Hyde. I think it's because he's in a situation that a lot of managers don't ever get to. A lot of the times when teams do this full rebuild, the tear down, the tanking, and the rebuild, they hire a young manager to come in and kind of just tough it out through the bad years, right? Brandon Hyde was hired in 2019. The first team he managed lost 100 games. Then they had 2020, and then the second full season that he managed also lost 100 games. So he was in such a tough spot. And then in 2022, they didn't make the playoffs, but they had a winning record and they kind of started to turn things around. And I think there were some people that thought like, okay, Brandon Hyde did 4 great years of managing this. Now they're going to bring in some sort of veteran manager and get them to the next step. They didn't. And then they won 101 games and won the division with Brandon Hyde. So then it was like, okay, maybe he is the right guy for the job. And then, 92 wins was a good year last year. Don't get me wrong, but they had some disappointments. They had a lot of injuries they dealt with last season. And some Orioles fans are starting to grumble about, should they move on from Hyde? I think Mike Elias loves Brandon Hyde, and I think they come as somewhat of a package deal as GM and manager right now. And Hyde's won a lot of games in the last couple of years as the Orioles manager. I think he does a good job with the relationships in that clubhouse. I don't know who the Orioles would really target if they moved on from him, but I still like Hyde being in that seat. But I will say, if the Orioles either miss the postseason or if they make it again and get swept again, they go another year without winning a postseason game, I do think we'll have to have a conversation in Baltimore about is Brandon Hyde the right guy moving forward.
Yeah, because they need that manager to help them get over the hump in certain areas. And I was shocked they kept him after the hunt. I was shocked to learn that they kept him after the 100 lost seasons because it's very tough to be in that situation when you're a manager like that. And look at the Phillies a few years ago. Who did they get rid of halfway through the season? John Madden. They didn't keep him. And guess what? They brought up their bench. I forgot what his role was at the time. But they brought in their new guy and they went to the World Series in 2022 with the Phillies. So it's very hard because you can get fired at any time. And depending on the fan base, of course, because let's say the Orioles were in Philadelphia, your manager wouldn't last that one. Trust me.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it helped him that his first 4 years, he had zero expectations. There couldn't have been less expectations on a manager. It was like, just get us through this. We know we're going to lose a bunch of games. And now for the last couple of years, it's the first time there's been expectations. So now he's getting graded much harder now on how he handles those.
Yeah. So tell us about what is your hold on, let me edit that. So tell us about what you've been doing up these days. Last time you were on the show, you were doing your Locked On Orioles show. You're still doing that now. What is some of your favorite parts about doing the Locked On Orioles podcast these days?
Yeah, I gotta say, I think I realized this in the second half of last year. So the Orioles had a fantastic start to last season. They were in first place at the All-Star break, and then they were basically a 500 team in the second half. They didn't play great baseball. They still got a wild card, but the Yankees ended up winning the division. And I wouldn't call them a bad team in the second half because if you're a 500 team, you're not a bad team. They were just kind of very up and
Man,
down. And there were some nights, David, where they would lose 6-1 to the Tigers, and it would just be like, what do I really talk about here after they lose 6-1 to
yeah,
the Tigers? Because it's a show that I do 5 days a week, coming up after each game. And I will say, I think the best part of the show is if I'm, because I'm still a fan of the Orioles
yeah,
first and foremost. I host this podcast, but I do it because I am a huge fan of the Orioles. And I think what's been nice is when they do have those games that are frustrating, and they lose a important game in September, they lose a postseason game, whatever it may be. I can immediately jump on the show, which is something I have to do anyway for this podcast that I'm hosting, and basically talk for 30 minutes about what went right, what went wrong, frustrations from the game, whatever it may be. And then I finish that podcast after 30 or so minutes, and I go, all right, I kind of got it all out, and I've done my
yeah,
research, and I cite stats, and I go through things that each player did. And I get to the end of it, I'm like, you know what? I'm still a little upset that they lost, especially after the 2 playoff losses. But I got a lot of it out in those 30 minutes, and hopefully a lot of people listened or watched it and enjoyed
mhm,
what I did. So I think that's the best part. It is a grind doing 5 podcasts per week.
yeah,
It's definitely a grind, but I think that's the best part of it. Like, for example, last week, the Orioles Red Sox series, the O's win the first game in their home opener. It's sold out. Fans are loving it. They're scoring run after run. And then the Red Sox come back and Crochet shuts them down on Wednesday night. And it was a little frustration of the Orioles getting shut out. Obviously, Crochet is a great
yeah.
pitcher, but also the frustration of the Orioles were also talking with the White Sox about Crochet this offseason. And the Red Sox made a
Oh, they
better
were.
offer. And and the Red Sox just made a better offer and
Oh,
they got him. And it was the frustration from Orioles fans, not only that, oh man, we just got shut out. That's always frustrating. But also it was the Orioles lost Corbin Burns. They didn't replace him with another ace this offseason. And they were at least interested in Garrett Crochet. And now he's on a division rival. And so you
yeah,
have those frustrations right after the game. And I get to just go talk about him for 30 minutes. And other people can chime in on the conversation. And then I get done with those 30 minutes and I go, you know what? That loss doesn't really bother me that much anymore. And it's baseball. So there's a game the next day and they can hopefully bounce back. And so that really, I think, is the best part of the show, which I've been doing now for over 5 years at this
yeah,
point, is just the ability to, especially as the team's gotten better. David, when they were losing 100 games, I wasn't getting frustrated after they lost because I expected them
yeah,
to lose almost every single game. It was more the excitement when they would win. But now when there are expectations and there are more frustrations after the losses, it's a nice way to just kind of get it all out for 30 minutes and then you move on to the next one.
yes, indeed. And what if there's like a double header? Do you still do the podcast after the games?
Yeah, and I'll my show is split up into 3 segments, about 10 or 15 minutes each
Oh, okay.
segment. And so if it is a double header, sometimes it's nice because then I'm like, okay, I have 2 games to
Yeah,
talk about. That's 2 out of my 3 segments. I only have to figure out what to do for one more of them. So that
yeah,
always makes it nice as well. There's always stuff to talk about. The double headers are always weird though, because it's a 5-day-a-week podcast, the happiness of the people listening or watching kind of stems on what happened with the game. So if they
yeah,
won last night, I will tell you right now, when the Orioles win, I get more listeners than when the Orioles lose. It just kind of makes sense. People want to listen to stuff about their team more when they win. It's always weird
yeah.
with
I
a
kind
double
of feel
header.
like that with certain
Yep.
podcasts too.
And it's weird when there's a double header because if they split the double header, you've got a win and a loss, and you never know if people are going to want to listen to just hear about the win, then turn it off if they're not going to listen because you're also talking about a loss. But yeah, I do fit in both games when they do have a double header.
Yeah, I have that certain feeling with certain like Boston sports podcasts where I just want to listen if they, oops, when they do something good, but when they're not doing good, I don't want to waste my time, But unless if I, I'm bored or another person personally, um, but it is what it is. Um, and what time do you usually upload those podcasts for those I'm wondering?
Yeah, so I usually record after the game ends. So I actually love the pitch clock. The pitch clock has been one of the
Oh,
best things for my podcast,
yes.
because it has cut 30 minutes off these games. And that means I can go to bed 30 minutes earlier when I am recording podcasts after the games. So, the Orioles play a lot of 6:30 games. So games over by 9 o'clock, I pretty much immediately record, edit, and upload. That's in by 10. and I'll usually schedule it for the the YouTube episode goes out at 7 a.m. the next day, and the
Okay.
audio posts at 3 a.m. Just the audio is up as basically as soon
Yeah.
as it possibly can be. So I kind of get those up early, and then nothing on the weekends, which is nice. So I don't record on Fridays or Saturdays, but then on Sundays, 1 o'clock game usually on a Sunday, and then at about 4 o'clock, I record and I recap all 3 games from the weekend in one
The
episode,
series, yeah.
and schedule that for the next morning.
Very cool. And that'll be it for this segment here. And go check Connor out on the Locked On Orioles podcast on YouTube and also Spotify. And I think that's all the platforms right there. So that'll be it for the segment. And we'll be right back after this.